Today we're going to be taking a look at this one-of-a-kind prototype tent coming from FSR. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. You may have seen this tent in a video last week. This is a brand new one-of-a-kind prototype coming from Freespirit Recreation. Now, about 2 weeks back, you may have seen me testing out one of their already existing tents, the Evo. Absolutely love that thing. If you haven't caught that video, I'll leave a link for it right up here. At the time that I took the Evo back, they happened to have this brand new prototype there, sort of waiting for me, and they allowed me to bring it out here and test it. So I've been running this tent for the past couple of weeks. You may have seen it in that previous video. I'll also leave a link for that up in the corner and in the description down below, so you can see how I'm using this thing in the real world. In that previous video, I didn't give you guys my full opinions on this thing because I wanted to test it out, use it a little bit, actually sleep in it before I made this video. So now, after a few weeks of traveling around with this new tent, which doesn't really have a name yet, I'll probably be referring to this as the FSR Lightweight throughout the video. Now that I've got all of my impressions on this thing, I'm ready to give you guys a rundown of this prototype. Keep in mind throughout this video that this is a prototype. There are going to be some changes that will definitely be made before these things go into production. Hopefully some of the feedback that I give throughout this video, FSR will incorporate into the actual production version of this tent, but there's a really good chance that it is going to come to fruition, and I'm stoked on it, so let's check it out. For starters, let's talk about the actual dimensions of this tent. One of the reasons I'm so stoked on it is because it fits almost perfectly on my Axis Cab Tacoma, which is about a 6-foot bed. I have it mounted up to my Diamondback HD cover with a front runner rack, and while the mounting solutions right now is not ideal, I could definitely fab my own mounts in the future, but by the time the production tent comes out, there's a good chance that they'll have all that stuff dialed in. So for the exterior dimensions, this tent is about 82 inches long and 51 inches wide. The inside dimensions are relatively the same because this thing is so lightweight. There's not a whole lot of metal structure around the outside. It may be an inch or two smaller on the inside, but I've slept in it no problem, and I think this tent is going to be good for about 1 to 2 people. Now, for the best part, the thing that I probably love most about this tent, and the thing that grabs people's attention almost immediately, is that this tent is coming in, as of right now, at 4.5 inches thick. I should really say 4.5 inches thin. This tent is super thin. It's also very lightweight, coming in right now at a weight of 87 pounds. That means I can load this tent onto the bed of my truck, secure it down, and offload it just as easily all by myself. Now, once I get into the final production of this tent, I'm assuming it's going to be maybe just a little bit thicker with a few different changes that they might be making. I don't really know what changes they're going to be making. So 4.5 inches thick right now is great. However, there may be some benefits to making it just a little bit thicker in the future. Now, when we look underneath this tent, one of the reasons it is so light is because it's a very simple aluminum structure. This is very similar to their High Country series of tents as well as the Evolution. There's not a big, thick piece of metal or wood underneath here giving it structural integrity. It all really gets it from the frame itself. One thing that is a little bit different about this is that there's some sort of sheet underneath. I don't know if it's aluminum or some type of plastic material, but that is actually what's keeping this tent sealed underneath, as opposed to just using one of those weather-resistant sort of mattresses that you'll find on their other tents. The sides of the tent are also aluminum, and then as we work our way up the sides and across the top, that's where it turns into sort of like a hard shell, soft shell hybrid. They're using this sort of leathery type of material, which you will find on a lot of tonneau covers out there. As of right now, the top is not hard, so it's just the fabric material on the inside with the tonneau material on the outside, and then the structure that goes across the top. I think in the future that's something that may change, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then the entire tent opens up with a simple buckle in the front and zippers that go around each side. Now, without talking or any interruptions in real time, I'm going to show you guys how quick this thing is to set up. I've got a timer right here on my phone, and we're going to start as soon as I open this buckle. Ready, set, go. And time. 30 seconds, and that's with me like walking around to each side of the truck. Two of the main things that I look for in a tent is the setup time and the breakdown time. With this thing, it's incredibly fast. The second portion of that is having the ability to actually leave blankets, sleeping bags, pillows, whatever you may have inside of here. So right now from the last video, I left a blanket and my hover quilt in here, which is essentially like a sleeping bag. And as you could tell when this thing was closed up, I still had plenty of room, so I could probably squeeze my pillow in there too if I wanted to. Now this tent does have hardware for a ladder, however, I just have been using a cargo box, step up onto my tailgate, and since it opens from the back here, it's very easy to access. Right here is that mounting point for a ladder like I mentioned, so if you're mounting this on a different vehicle, you're probably going to want to opt for a ladder. And then before we get into the details and features of this tent, one thing to note is that when you pop it up, you will notice this little bungee cable right here. This is actually for closing the tent, so it sort of compresses the sides, and I can close this thing in pretty much the same amount of time. So as of right now, I would typically like pull this down and put it around a hook. However, there's not a hook down here yet. So what I've been doing is just coming around to the side here and unhooking that strap while I'm actually using the tent. You will also notice this strap right here, so if you have it mounted on top of a taller vehicle, like say on the top of a 4Runner, you can use the ladder and you can use this grab handle to then pull the tent closed while you're standing on the ground. Now that this tent is open, let's start from the hinge side and just sort of work our way around and then to the inside of the tent. So right here you'll notice that there is really no hinge articulation where it pushes the top cover towards the back of the truck, so I still have the same amount of room here. I cannot say that about every other tent out there, but it's nice that this doesn't make the tent any longer when you open it up. You can disregard this little wire right here. These are string lights that I put in the tent, but right next to that is a little cover with a zipper where you can have like a little electric pass through. So I actually have these lights running from the inside of the tent to the outside, and I have it going through the pass through on the other side so I can plug it in. You will also find these little ring connection points. They're kind of bungee, and you're going to use those to actually secure the side if you want to open up the windows. These gas struts, as of right now, I believe are rated for 320 pounds. You could probably also put a 500-pound strut in its place there just to give it even more rigidity. But they actually have a solution for that, which is right up here in the front. I'm not sure if this is going to carry over into the final version or not, but they do have these extra support braces here, which are just held in these little slots and a Velcro strap on the side. You simply lift that up. I'm going to push that up into the top of the tent. I can actually push the tent open to sort of make it a little bit more rigid, and then I will twist it to then lock that into place. Where I'm at, up here on the top of this little mountain, there's a good chance it's going to be kind of windy tonight, so I'm curious to see how this tent will do, but I definitely feel a little bit more comfortable having that in place. And of course, there is one over on this side as well. Another thing to note is that they do have these vents around the side. These are similar to all the other FSR tents. It has a little standoff in the middle, so you can keep the rain out while still ventilating the tent. And then if I push that standoff out of the way, I can Velcro that into place. You will find that on both the right side, the door, and the left side. Now coming up to the front of the tent, FRS and a lot of their tents, you may find these bags right here, which are good for holding gear. So you could throw your shoes in there, you could put some tools. They have one on each side, and these things don't take up any room. It allows the tent to close just fine, even if you have some gear in there. Right now I have some extra mounting hardware and some rubber caps that I just didn't put on the tent because it's a prototype. And I believe these are going to be an option. They're probably going to be removable, but don't quote me on that. Now this tent is not made out of their tri-layer material. They're trying to keep it very lightweight, and this is very much a summer tent. It would be kind of cool to see that in the future, but that's something we can talk about by the end of the video. So it's just this normal weather resistant sort of tent fabric. They also have a bug screen on the inside, and this outer layer right here also acts as an awning. This is where you guys are really going to see how prototype this tent is, because this awning is not very great as it is right now. So right here are two little support bars. I just had them stowed away underneath the mattress. On each side you will find these little eyelets, so I'm going to slip the bar into there. And then the bottom of this flap does have like a little tension bar in it right now, and then eyelets on the outside, so I'll simply hook the bar through the eyelet. Going to do the same thing on this side, and now we have a little awning. So as you guys can probably tell, this awning is not super taut right now. This is definitely something that's going to be worked out by the time they get around to the production model. A few things that I could think to combat this would be to angle these outward to kind of put tension on the awning, or just sort of change it entirely, maybe put a crossbar and then another support that comes down from the roof. So as of now, that's how this prototype awning is sitting, but when I'm sleeping at night, I want this thing closed up, so I'm not really using it as an awning anyway. Hey guys, quick jump cut here, but I just realized something as I'm out camping in this tent now. This is the whole reason why I'm testing this thing out. Here's what it looks like with the lights that I strung up here. I took the arms that are really made to like hold the top of the tent up, and I put those in the awning holes, and that makes this awning so much better. The fabric up top is still not super taut, so that could use a little bit of adjustment, maybe moving the eyelets in a little bit. So when it's not windy outside, I don't really think you need the support on the top of the tent there because the struts hold it up just fine. So it holds the awning out perfectly, and I can adjust it and make it nice and low or all the way up so you can see the view. And then of course, if it does get windy, you probably don't want your awning out anyway, so you would put the awning down, put the poles back in the up position on the top of the tent. I actually really like those things now. Kind of a cool little thought I just ran across. Now to get this thing up and out of the way, you simply roll it up. There are two different closures, just like the side windows. There are little elastic bands with a stopper that you put through a ring. I really like this setup as opposed to dealing with like Velcro and fancy latches. It's just nice and simple and also very lightweight. I can do the same thing with the bug screen. This has closures of its own, so if you want to just put the bug screen down and have the outside of the tent rolled up, or vice versa, you can do that. And now I've got a killer view right here of this massive thunderstorm that's about to roll in. Now the bug screens inside of this tent work exactly the same, so let me get those out of the way. So there we have our completely open and ventilated tent. So here's an outside look at this tent completely opened up. You can tell why it's so lightweight. It's really just like a little awning to sleep underneath. You could even take this a step further and open the side bug nets all the way and just really be sleeping on a mattress with just a little bit of shelter over your head. Now coming back up to the inside, let's take a look at the current mattress. I showed this in the previous video, but as of right now, it's just like an inch thick foam pad. They do also have a condensation pad underneath here, which I don't think is entirely necessary. It's definitely nice to have, but I don't think a tent like this is really going to hold a ton of condensation. So I do have some preferences there, which we'll talk about in the end. And then everything else in here is pretty bare bones as of right now. We just have not one, but two different storage options. Now, as you can see, sitting up here in the tent, I of course have plenty of headroom. This is typically the way that I'm gonna be sleeping. Not sure why you would want to sleep with your head down towards the actual angle of the tent, but I guess everyone's gonna use a tent differently. As far as these storage solutions go, I definitely like that there is storage on here. However, it does need a little bit of work. I talked about this in the last video, but this is just on some like elastic bungees. I do like the colorway that they have going on here. I like black and orange, matches my truck pretty well. So I do have some ideas on how to make that better. I have been using this one up here, just sort of dumping my EDC items into. But one thing that I would like to see is to take this panel for storage and just center it on the tent. That's kind of my OCD, but right now all of the rings are over to this side here, so the storage is up on the left-hand side of the tent as you're looking out. So I'm about 5'10", 5'11" on a good day, and this is what it looks like with me laying here. If I put my feet all the way down in the hinge corner of the tent, I still have about 2 fists above my head, so for me, that's plenty of space. I know a lot of people who are taller are going to prefer a longer tent. I prefer a tent like this because it fits on a 6-foot bed. Someone who is 6 foot or taller, they're probably going to want a bigger tent, but also I'm never really sleeping straight out like a stick like this. So I've found this thing to be pretty damn comfortable so far. Now before this storm over here rolls in and we get a little bit wet, let me close this thing up and we'll talk about some of the changes that I would like to see FRS make to this super lightweight tent. All right, so got the tent all closed up, getting ready to brace for this storm. Hopefully it passes and just kind of goes around me. Now I want to talk about things that I would personally change with this tent. It's probably going to seem like I'm ripping the whole tent apart and giving it a bad name, but that's not what I'm doing at all. I have the opportunity to test out this prototype and I have been using it, so I want to give some feedback that hopefully will be implemented in the future. We're going to do sort of the same thing, starting with the top and up here at the hinge, and then we'll work our way back. So one of the first changes that I would like to see implemented is something with the top here. This tonneau cover material doesn't bother me, but as you can tell, it's sort of flexy. I was running this thing through some pretty tight trees, and luckily I didn't cut it or puncture it or anything like that. You may notice this little tape job up here that was actually done when the tent was being unboxed, so there was an accidental slice in the top there. So I don't know if a full hard top would make sense or if that would add too much weight to it. Basically, my idea would be to take the underside material, whatever is giving it rigidity underneath there, and just sort of adding a lightweight panel like that to the top. It could go right on top, it could go underneath this material, but I think that would make the tent just a little bit better. Now, coming around to the side of the tent, I really like this little access hole here so I can run wires. However, that hole is not found on the inside of the bug net. So right now I have this wire running underneath the unzipped bug net and then out this little pouch. I think there needs to be something like a little pass through on the bug net side as well. Now, coming up to the top of the side here, you will notice there are little vents here like you will find on a lot of their other tents. They're sort of rigid and they pop out and have a little standoff, so you can get some nice ventilation going through here. This one may be a little bit nitpicky, but one thing that I would change is just adding a little bit more Velcro around here. Right now there is a single Velcro patch that you sort of close that up with, but you'll notice the sides kind of bow out like that. So I would either put a longer strip here or make it 3 pieces, or even a zip, now that I think about it. If you put a zipper on there and still kept this little standoff, I think that might be a pretty good option to keep the tent ventilated and keep it looking clean at the same time. Now, coming around to the entrance of the tent, like I mentioned, you have this little sort of bungee cord here which will suck in the sides when you're closing it up. There definitely need to be hooks down here, that way I don't have to completely unhook it like you guys watch me do. So down here in the corner, just a little hook to bungee that down and around here when you're actually going in and out of the tent. That would be a nice addition. And then also these bags, which we talked about. I don't really have a use for these because I can just kick my shoes off and throw them underneath my Diamondback cover. As of right now, these are fixed into the tent. They are sewed into the liner there. So I would like to see an option where these are removable, and that's probably something that's going to happen anyway. As far as these supports go, I think it's a pretty good option. I think it's going to really make the structure of the tent a little bit more rigid, especially in some high wind situations. Another thing that may be possible would be to upgrade the struts. So from like a 320 to a 500 or something like that. That will definitely keep the tent upright. However, as of right now, I think this is a pretty good idea. If and when it gets windy when I'm using this tent, I will follow up with a video and let you guys know how these extra supports actually do. The awning, we don't really need to talk about that because you already know my feelings on that. That will definitely be improved in the actual production model. And now coming to the inside of the tent. One thing that I would do for this storage solution is probably just sew it into place. Or even if you don't go that far, you could put some type of Velcro on there and just Velcro it into place. That way, if you're not using it, you could pop it off. Dig the color scheme, really like it. I like that there are storage options in a tent like this. Like I said, I would like to see this little pouch up here centered on the doorway, but something like that might not even be necessary if that thing is secured into place. So I dig that. I just wish it was done a little bit differently, and I'm sure it will be. And then the lighting situation as well. You guys probably saw in the previous video how I strung some lights around here. FSR typically puts lights in a lot of their tents, so this thing is kind of similar to the new Aspen that they just released. That is a super cool looking tent. Haven't had the chance to check it out yet, but that one has a light strip running all around the inside, so I'm pretty sure FSR is going to do something very similar for this. Another thing, again being kind of nitpicky here, but this little pole handle, I don't really have a use for this with the way I have the tent set up on my truck. So right now I could remove the strap from this side, but over here it's sort of like fixed in. It's kind of screwed into place. So I would like to see this strap coming with the option to be completely removable, because if I'm using this tent a lot, I'm probably just going to take this off, and it'd be nice to just sort of undo the strap rather than taking out that little screw up there. Now, the final thing that I'd like to see change on this tent is actually the mattress, and it's kind of a combination of things. This mattress could definitely be a little bit thicker. No matter what happens though, I really hope you still retain the ability to keep a sleeping bag and pillows in here. I have not been leaving my pillow in here because there is no hard top to it to sort of compress it down, so I didn't want to have a bulge sticking out through the top. If they change the top cover and make it hard, I think I could store a pillow in here no problem. You could also make this tent a little bit thicker. So giving us the ability to keep sleeping bags in here, maybe 2 sleeping bags and a pillow, a little bit thicker of a mattress. This tent is obviously super thin as it's closed up, and I do have some room right now, but if you made this maybe 1/2 inch or even 1 inch taller, I believe you could fit all of your gear in there with a little bit comfier of a mattress, and this thing will be pretty damn dialed. So I'm curious to see how this thing will look once it's in production. So I think that's gonna be all that I had on this tent for now. I'm gonna hunker down and shelter from the rain here, so I'll keep you guys updated on how this thing is in the wind and how water resistant it is. If you have any questions on this thing, let me know in the comments down below. I'm gonna try to answer everything as best as possible, and once more information comes out, then I'll really be able to fill you guys in on all of the details of this FSR lightweight, whatever it may be called in the future. If you can think of any suggestions that I left out, leave those in the comments down below too, because this is gonna be sort of like group feedback to make a kick-ass tent that's affordable, hopefully under $2,000. I think that's pretty realistic, and I'm excited to see this thing go into production. Now, if you guys are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe because I make new videos every week. As always, thank you for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.